The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmet's casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Get your tech. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Welcome back, DFS Army. This is FantasyFling taking another look at what won the Milly Maker last week, the lineup construction, and then MME strategy of top DFS pros and how they look to get different to leverage the field in this contest, the Milly Maker. Several of the ways they did, fading chalk in those games, looking to get direct leverage, and then also getting different in their lineup constructions. A lot of double tight ends and whatnot. Overall, it was a losing week for a lot of top DFS pros. So we are going to take a look at DFS Army's founder, our own, the Geek, at one of his contests that he placed high in. He had a positive ROI, his contest selection. So let's go ahead and look at that. Let's go. All right, so we're going to start off with the MME, or actually the Milly Maker review of what won it last week. So let's go ahead and look at that. All right. So this is right up I do over at DFS Army. And really, it's not surprising, right? When you looked at the scoreboard of all the game totals last week that we had a total that was over 270 points. So this one, we had game totals of 57, 70, 58, 54, and even the Broncos, who, haven't had any offense all year, they scored 62 points. So we knew the Milly Maker winning lineup was going to have a high score, well over 100, 250. And of course, we're talking about 177,000 lineups. So all it takes is one with that right combination to smoke the competition. And this one certainly did. This lineup that scored 272 was 35 points higher than second place. And so this was achieved by just some really heavy stacks. We had a Trevor Lawrence plus Zay Jones plus Evan Ingram plus Derrick Henry. That was the primary stack that took it down. And then we had a secondary stack of Jerick McKinnon and Jerry Jeudy that just went ballistic. So total stacking points, 195. With the primary, you had over 125, and then the secondary, you had 68. And then this lineup was also very contrarian. This total stacking ownership was 46%. As we've kind of gone over time and time again, when the scores are high, the thick stacking combinations will find their way to the top of the leaderboards. So this one had a quarterback +2 with Derrick Henry as a bring back. Between the four plays at a 31-point average. And then the secondary stack had a 34-point average between Jeudy and McKinnon. As far as ownership, contrarian. From the top, Trevor Lawrence, 2%. Derrick Henry there was a couple 2 to 3 chalky areas. The rest of the lineup was very contrarian. So Henry, 21%. Justin Jefferson, 27%. And then Jeudy, borderline chalky at 11%. These were the 3 chalk plays. And then everywhere else leveraged. So Miles Sanders, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, Jerick McKinnon, and 49ers D. So this is total of 87%. And we've now had a month really of contrarian lineups, which is the average over that time has been 90%, which brings the average on the season to 113%. Now, as far as the top leverage plays, pretty easy to depict here. Trevor Lawrence, he was 2% owned. He was top scoring quarterback on the slate. Second place was, $2,400 more, and Lawrence scored 6 points more than him. So great leverage play. Miles Sanders, I thought it was interesting that the Eagles were projected for a lot of rushing yards according to DFS Army Statsational Power Rankings. This week they had projected for, I believe, over 160 rushing yards, 168, 170, something like that. Well, Sanders had 144 and 2 touchdowns, which just kind of surprised more. The field wasn't on him, I guess, just based on the fact that he's in a timeshare. People just didn't want to deal with it. But Jerry Jeudy, he was a great value play with Sutton out. DFS Army's domination station was all over it, jamming Jeudy in as the top fantasy points per dollar play. And because of that, he ended up a little chalky. And he was great leverage off of chalkier plays like Chase, DJ Chark, Thielen, Lockett, Wilson, and Amon-Ra. And then Evan Ingram really was the top leverage play on the entire slate, as we'll see in multiple lineups that place high in the Milly Maker and in the Flea. And myself included, I had some Ingram lineups. Really good. Luckily, we had the domination station that crammed him in there. The tight end position, it is one of high variance. It's really difficult to nail down. So when you roster one that ends up being the highest scoring player on the slate, and you do that 3% ownership, you are in fantastic shape to take that top spot. As long as you know what you're doing with the rest of your lineup, you're in great shape. So it was enough leverage to win this tournament, but this lineup had 2 extreme leverage plays. So 7 years of Jerick McKinnon's career, he had never had a day this big. So until Sunday, he was the top running back and really just a flex leverage play on the slate at 2% ownership and 35 points. So when we look at value, not only did this lineup had 4 players over 6X, what was really the most impressive is Evan Ingram at 12.78x his salary. That's definitely the highest we've seen this year. Highest I can remember in 2021 as well. So the extreme value that we got from just the Lawrence, Zay Jones, and Ingram stack allowed for paying up for $7,900 Henry and then $9,000 Justin Jefferson. And then 49ers D, we've talked about this multiple times. Defenses, you want to pay up in GPPs for defenses. Typically you kind of want to fade the chalk, but you still want to pay up in GPPs as we continue to see $3,000 being the average price for a defense to win the Milly Maker. And so really after 4 weeks, when we saw the Milly Maker scores low, we were able to see higher winning scores, and they just correlate with the game environment shooting out. So that's why we want to target those in thick stacks if we think those games are going to go off. 58-point Jacksonville and Tennessee game. That game was a sneaky shootout scenario, obviously, with Tennessee having a poor wide receiver defense. 62-point Denver and Kansas City game, kind of the same thing, even though Denver's offense has been so inept. Targeting that game was sharp because Kansas City, they obviously are not good on defense. And then obviously the game total everyone was on was the 57-point Detroit, Minnesota game. And then DFS Army was all over Jalen Hurts again too. So 70-point New York and Philly game. If you certainly targeted the Philly side, which we said you want to hit Philly side, you don't need to bring backs. These are obviously some of the game environments that you are looking to target. And you did well if you did. So we are going to take a look at some of the top DFS pros and what they were doing. Now, a comment was made actually by Checkhook last week, and it's something to keep in mind. He said something like, I see lots of guys losing, but the key to remember is it only takes one lineup. And that's true. We've gone over that multiple times on how these pros, they're going to lose most weeks, but that one lineup makes their season. OsiMo, for example, he placed third in the Milly Maker a few weeks ago, won 40,000, 50,000, whatever it was. So even though most weeks he may lose 2,000, 3,000, 1,000, he's now profitable on the season. So that's all it really takes. And we're going to see that with some other lineups later on. But first off, ChipotleAddict. So we're going to look at him. And like I said, I was hard pressed to find any DFS pros that were profitable this past week. But nonetheless, we're going to kind of see their strategy and their thought process because, again, all it takes is one lineup. So ChipotleAddict, his top lineup, Kirk Cousins. He had an Adam Thielen and TJ Hawkinson stack. No bringbacks there. And then he had Christian McCaffrey, Henry, Chase, Moore, Dolchich, and the Pittsburgh D. So 135% total ownership, 185 points. And he did have a couple things, lots of double tight ends with his lineup. And this is something that pros will do as a way to differentiate their lineup. Not something you want to do in cash games for the most part, right? But when you're talking a large field GPP like the Milly Maker, how can we get different? Some of these guys, it really isn't that big of a difference between paying for a 3K wide receiver. If you pay it for like a stud like Hawkinson, who's in a great game environment, paying down and doing a double tight end isn't a bad build. When they're going to get targeted pretty heavily. Because we constantly see winning teams in the Milly Maker with a 3 to 4K wide receiver. And some of these tight ends are certainly getting quite a bit more targets than they are. So one of his best lineups, he obviously had Evan Ingram, and really, if you had the right players around him, you did really well, and it was not hard to get over 200 points on the day. Now, some of his exposures, you will notice that he faded Pollard and Zeke. And in doing so, because they were chalk, he's trying to get direct to leverage in that game. So he played Dak. He played Lamb. He played Schultz. So Dak, 21% ownership. Kirk Cousins, 27%. And then kind of the same thing. If you're going to be under the field on Goff, you're going to play the other side of that game. You're going to hope that obviously Minnesota has the better game, and they end up in the nuts with Kirk Cousins and his pass catchers. Geno Smith, he was over there. We liked Geno this week as opposed to trying to guess Tony Jones or, Travis Homer. Just play Geno. It was a sharp play, and obviously, it didn't work out for everyone. He had a small quarterback pool, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So kept it small. And then, so he was high on Henry, Etienne, Latavius Murray, Foreman. I was too. I mean, I really thought Foreman was going to have a better day, but really, the field was high on Foreman too. He kind of looked like a sneaky play, and then he wasn't sneaky at all. He was very chalky, and then it was a 3-way timeshare, so it just didn't work out. Under on Mixon, under on Swift, under on Zeke. So, fading a lot of the chalk there and getting different in other spots, like playing 27% Latavius Murray, having 27% exposure to a 7% guy. So, Dak, Lamb, 41%. That was second highest exposure behind Adam Thielen. DK, obviously, in sacks with Geno. Some Jamar Chase and Higgins. So, playing some Burrow, obviously. And being under the field on Mixon, that's the direct leverage we were talking about. Lockett, just barely over on Lockett, and then same with Justin Jefferson. So not too much exposure to Justin Jefferson. And then, under on Amon-Ra, under on Garrett Wilson, under on Chark. Now you'll notice he had a lot of exposure to tight ends over 20%. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and really 3 over 29%. So you could see the double tight end, right? The double tight end lineups with all that exposure. And then, so over on Tampa, over on Pittsburgh, and over on Carolina. And then he faded Dallas defense, which really is what you want to do when you have a defense that is going to be that chalky. We love paying up for defenses, but even in a high-scoring defense this year, in a great matchup, just the variance of the defensive position is very hard to predict. So more times than not, that's a positive EV decision to fade that chalk. So I did go down the line a little bit with some top DFS pros and just looking for some guys that didn't lose almost all their bacon in the Milly Maker this week. So I wanted to kind of review some guys that I haven't reviewed yet. So BGRE Seth, his top lineup, 188 points. Kirk Cousins, Jefferson, Thielen, Hawkinson, and then he also had another stack in there. Henry, Pollard, and Judy. Yeah, and then a Carolina and Will Dissly stack. That's what it was. So pretty chalky, 146%. Again, a lot of the top pros, that's what we're seeing. Double tight end lineups getting different. A lot of double tight end. Now, he was under on Goff and Burrow, over on Wilson, Darnold, Dak, and Cousins. So, as you can see, 20% Wilson, 15% Darnold, 13% Dak, and then 18% Cousins. So, that was all the positive leverage. And then, under on Burrow, and then mainly just under on Goff in relation to the field. He also was under on a lot of the chalky running backs. And, it's all about direct leverage. So we're not fading this game entirely, right? When he plays. So he had Pollard, for example, but let's say, for example, Swift. Under on Swift, under on Goff. Pretty much just under on the Detroit side. But over on Cousins. And when we go to wide receiver, you see over on Justin Jefferson, over on Thielen. So really just playing the Minnesota side of that game, as opposed to, knowing most of the field was on Goff, was on Amon-Ra, was on Swift. A lot of ownership to Chark as well. So he did have quite a bit of Mixon as well. And then obviously Henry, 64%. So way over on Henry. Under on Zeke. And then, as we kind of allude to, under on Swift. And then also under on Foreman, which ended up working out because let me tell you what, I did not enjoy Foreman crashing my GPP lineups that were near the top. Kendall Hinton, over on him. DJ Moore. CD Lamb. So, Dak to CD Lamb. That's a way to get leverage off of the chalkier running backs. And then Judy. Double the fill on Judy. So you love that. Had he made a couple different lineup decisions, being that far over the field on Judy, ends up being a really good day for him. Thielen, Jefferson. And then, basically even on Amon-Ra. Even with the field. Lot of wide receivers. Under on Chark, Wilson, Lockett. And then, so we talked about him having a lot of double tight end lineups. Well, here you go. Dulcich, 44%. TJ Hawkinson, 33%. Schultz, 14%. Chig, 19%. And DFS Army, the Players Club, Geek was all over Chig this week, and he absolutely smashed. Did not take much of his $2,700 salary. Pittsburgh D, Denver D, Carolina D. Once again, fading that Dallas chalk. All right, so this next lineup, it pains me to see this because everyone knows who OsiMo is, and I've done 13 Milly Maker reviews, MME strategy, top DFS pros, And when Trevor Lawrence was going off, and it was, Zay Jones and Evan Ingram, all I could think was, I can't wait to look at the fantasy labs. I looked at the leaderboards. I didn't see OsiMo's name. And I was like, I feel like he's going to have like a great week, because I constantly do reviews where he overstacks Jacksonville. And oh my gosh, the 1 week when he did not stack Jacksonville, they went off. He had no Trevor Lawrence exposure. None. And yeah, if he had stacked Trevor Lawrence, if he had done, 3-4 stacks with a bring back like Derrick Henry, like he always does, he would absolutely crush it this week. So sad to see that, but it is what it is. Such is life, right? Even for one of the top DFS pros like OsiMo. So Russell Wilson, 15%. So sharp play there, right? So obviously was off of Lawrence, but was right on Russell Wilson and some of his pass catchers. Patrick Mahomes, 15%. Kirk Cousins, 23%. And yeah, he just faded some of the more obvious plays. So obviously he had 0% exposure to Lawrence, although, he wasn't chalk, but Goff faded Goff. Was under the field there. Burrow and Geno. So he also faded Zeke, Swift, and Mixon. And we'll see he was over on Chase as direct leverage off of Mixon. So Swift under the field there. Slightly under on Foreman. A little bit under on Mixon. So, he didn't completely fade Mixon, but a little under there. A little over on Pollard, obviously, some Murray. So quite a bit of Denver, and then obviously Henry, which is kind of surprising. Obviously, he had some exposure to that game, but it wasn't with Trevor Lawrence, right? It was Derrick Henry. It was Travis Etienne. I'm guessing that he kind of just thought that Henry was going to go bonkers and that was going to keep Trevor Lawrence off the field. And that's obviously going to be a negative game script for their offense if they're on the sidelines. Deontay Johnson, Kendall Hinton. So yeah, quite a bit of Denver. He had some Juju probably in the stacks. In fact, we will look at some of his lineups here. I don't want to skip that. DJ Moore, Thielen. So obviously Thielen in Cousins stacks on, doing the Minnesota side of that game, more so fading the Detroit side. So because he faded Amon-Ra as well. So Jerry Jeudy over there. Justin Jefferson slightly over there, both on Jeudy and Jefferson, slightly over the field. And then, yeah, he had a ton of wide receivers. 44 wide receivers, I believe. That said, MAC exposure was 30%. So, yeah, quite a bit under on Amon-Ra, Lockett, Wilson. And we'll look at his lineups. I'm pretty sure he had, this most exposure to 3 tight ends. He's going to have some double tight end sacks. So Kelsey, Dolchitz, and Chig. And some Hawkinson even there. 16%. Now, this was interesting. I noticed looking at his lineup. So it kind of goes to show when you set salary caps, you're doing that to prevent duplicates, right? You don't want your lineup to be too chalky and duplicated and not be unique enough. You're not going to leverage the field that way. But if you think about getting unique in the way that you build your lineup, even if your cumulative ownership is high, you can still be unique, right? This lineup is 175% total ownership, and yet it was not duplicated. So he was the only one with this lineup in 177,000 entries. And the way he did that was he had 8 players stacked across 3 different games. So he had Goff, Amon-Ra, DJ Chark, and a Justin Jefferson bring back. Then he had a team stack of Derrick Henry and Austin Hooper. And where was the last one? Yeah, Tony Pollard and Chris Moore. So 3 stacks there. That's going to be a lineup that's going to be hard to duplicate. And then obviously he had depth for defense. So even though his lineup was very chalky, it was still unique. And so, yeah, he still brought the heavy stacks the OsiMo way. He just left out Lawrence this week, unfortunately. Cousins, Cook, Jefferson, Thielen, no bringbacks. Henry, Chig in a team stack, and then Judy and Dulcich in a team stack. So same thing with the second place lineup. Well, second best lineup for him. Yeah. So we're seeing the last one, Dulcich and Chig, 2 tight ends. Kelsey and Chig, 2 tight ends. Hawkinson and Hooper. Chig and Dulcich. A little bit of Visca, Fryermuth and Chig. So, yeah, on and on. Now, as far as top 10, top 20, top, 30, 40 DFS pros go, the Colts is one of them. This guy is a former Milly Maker winner. So I wanted to take a look at his lineup this week because, he had a pretty good ROI day as far as MME pros go in the Milly Maker. And he did stack some Trevor Lawrence. Now, he certainly would have been much better off had he put Evan Ingram in this lineup, but still pretty good. So Trevor Lawrence, Zay Jones, and then brought back with Chig and Henry. And then he had a Justin Jefferson. And then as a one-off, and then Michael Gallup and Chris Moore. And actually he had Christian McCaffrey and San Fran's D stack. So lots of stacks here. Very low owned lineup, 97%, 212 points. So great lineup. I mean, this looks like some of the lineups that I built. Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk, and Zay Jones. Just not enough. Trevor Lawrence plus Zay Jones plus Evan Ingram. That was really the combination that you needed. But it was, it was just hard to predict. Christian Kirk was in a smash spot. Ingram got all the tutties. That's how it goes. Henry, Foreman, Jefferson, Hooper is the bring back in that Tennessee game, Judy, and Carolina defense. So let's look at some of his exposures. So has Trevor Lawrence, obviously, 10%. Geno Smith, 17%. So over on Trevor Lawrence, Geno, Kirk Cousins, and Joe Burrow. And faded Goff. So kind of the same strategy for a lot of the pros. Goff is the most obvious play. And while a good play, we're going to fade that chalk. We're going to be under on that. We're going to play the other side of that game, Kirk Cousins. And in fading Goff, really just a lot of Detroit's offensive players were faded. So over on Henry, Pierce, Etienne, Murray, Foreman, Cook, slight leverage on Cook, and fading Swift, fading Zeke, fading Mixon. And when I say fading, it's not completely fading, just being under the field. Now, if you're going to be under the field on Zeke, you're going to be over the field on CeeDee Lamb. So positive leverage, of course. DK, great play there. Robert Woods, leverage play, didn't work out, but still great leverage play. In the process, Jamar Chase, because he had gotten like a 20% target share when Terry Burks went out. Jamar Chase, you're going to be under the field on Mixon. You're going to have Jamar Chase 38%. Lamb, 18%. A lot of wide receivers. Highest exposure, Jamar Chase. A lot of receivers in the teens. Good positive leverage there with Judy. Basically just even on Justin Jefferson. And then, yeah, way under on Amon-Ra. So didn't want anything to do with the Lions offense as far as looking at that from a leverage standpoint. It's a tough call, but you got to be willing to make those decisions to win a large field GPP. You got to suffer the losses to get through to the big wins. So Dalton Schultz, Travis Kelce, Austin Hooper, Noah Fant, Chig. And it just sucks because, I mean, you look at his lineups and, $3,500 into the Milly Maker, really only lost $800. So had a really good day by MME standards in the Milly Maker. And because he didn't have any Evan Ingram, it's the reason he didn't have a profitable day. And that's just more or less how it's going to go. So we are going to switch gears here a little bit and look at the Geek, DFS Army founder, the Geek turning average Joes into DFS pros. And what he did in the Flea MME strategy, some of the top lineups that he had that made his day, made a positive ROI day in the Flea. What I like about the Flea is it's a $5 entry fee. So, almost 50,000 entries. So it's still a large field GPP. Not easy to win, right? Very difficult to win, to beat out 50,000 lineups. This keeps happening when I try to go the Flea. But it's only $5 versus $20. So to MME it, you're putting, you're putting $750 into it as opposed to $3,500. All right, show me the Geeks lineup. Come on now. There we go. So his top lineup, and shout out to DFS Army Tournament Tactics. Bobby Wow, this was a shout out he had on the show. I love the call. Trevor Lawrence, Stacks, and obviously the optimizer, DFS Army, you stack Trevor Lawrence with 2. And this is what I love about reviewing the Geeks MME strategies, because being a DFS Army subscriber, being a staff, I know, I follow all the content. I know what the plays are. I know what the process is to a T as far as their domination station, our optimizer, how it's set up, and how you can get to these plays. Because I'm running it with the same settings, and these plays are popping up for me as well. For if I'm doing a minimum exposure to Trevor Lawrence, if I'm getting Evan Ingram, which I did, and helps me place top 5 in a GPP as well. So he had Trevor Lawrence +2, and that was able to give him Zay Jones and Evan Ingram in a stack. And Christian McCaffrey was obviously, a great leverage play, because we know that with Purdy, they want to run the offense through Christian McCaffrey. Tony Pollard, we love that play as well. And really just both the running backs and Cowboys for that game script that really didn't end up being super positive like we thought. But however, that was the type of game script where you can actually support 2 running backs in the same lineup, because that was the way it was projected, where the Cowboys were just going to absolutely blow the doors off the Texans. And we know the Cowboys have great running backs and like to run the ball. Garrett Wilson, we've been high on him all year. He's still underpriced. So, and then DPJ, just at his salary. And this is a game environment that, we thought could be pretty good. One of the more higher scoring games. So great one off there with both Wilson and DPJ. And then Tyler Lockett, just continues to be a big part of Seattle's offense. And, our thought process was, let's probably just avoid the Travis Homer, Tony Jones mess and think the offense is going to run through Geno, DK, and Tyler Lockett. And that's more or less, the thought process and kind of what happened, because it ended up being a timeshare and there was no running back for Seattle that really, went off there. obviously. So 105% total ownership, 212 points. That's his top lineup. And really, these top two lineups, really just what made the day, right? This is $250. This is 22nd out of 47,562. So really good. Obviously, placing that high in a tournament. And it was Trevor Lawrence that brought him there. So Trevor Lawrence, again, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram. This one had Judy. So these between Lawrence, Ingram, and Judy, we saw those three in the Milly Maker. They scored 270 points. So these are, the three that she needed to have. Tony Pollard, Zeke. Now, this was cool to see two running backs in the same lineup. I had some lineups built in the domination station with Pollard and Zeke, and I was like, nah, I'm good on that. I don't like two running backs in the same game. But I obviously understand the thought process, because even then, this isn't bad at all. Like, you could have picked any two running backs over the day, and unless you had McKinnon or Miles Sanders, or Henry or Christian McCaffrey, like, you'd be hard pressed to find two running backs that produce this high points. So great way to get different there. Obviously, we were heavy on eating Amon-Ra chalk and just get different elsewhere. And it just didn't work for Amon-Ra, but it was still a positive EV decision. And then playing the other side of that game too. So, we like both sides as a way to get direct leverage. Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, bring it back with DJ Chark. And then, two tight ends, Chig and Greg Dulcich. We got Christian McCaffrey and San Fran. Team stack there, and then obviously you have Derrick Henry and Chig's team stack. So a lot of stacking here. Chalky didn't matter because of all the stacking across different games went unique, like we kind of went over with OsiMo's lineup. So great job, $275, positive ROI for Geek. Let's take a look at his exposures. Now, even though some of his best lineups had Henry and Pollard, as we kind of just alluded to, the top lineups, still a little bit under there, right? Henry, Pollard, and that's fine, because overall that might be your strategy to fade it, but really all it takes, especially when you're 150ing, is that one lineup, which continues to be the theme to make the day for you. So top exposure, Christian McCaffrey at running back, DeAndre Swift over the field. Obviously, it didn't work out for Swift. The volume wasn't there. Not really sure what's going on there, but it is what it is. Now we know. Ezekiel Elliott, Dalvin Cook, and then, not being crazy over on Mixon. I know Geek wasn't super excited about the play, even though the tools said it looked good. It's just too many questions. Perrine's having a bigger role. He hasn't played in a couple games because of concussions. So basically just even with the field there. And then Dalvin Cook, same there. Little under on Henry and Foreman and Pollard, as I mentioned. Now, quarterback. I know Geek doesn't play a ton of quarterbacks, but obviously Huntley got hurt. And, this might have been an even better day for him if Huntley doesn't get hurt. Had some exposure to Huntley and Andrews as well, but he gets hurt. It is what it is. He was in the winning Milly Maker lineup last year with Andrews. So it's one of those times where has worked in the past. The price was right. The results just didn't match the process, but the process was right there. And then, Trevor Lawrence, 10%. And that was what made the day. Gino, over on Gino, 18%. Even with the field on Cousins, and basically even on Goff, little under on Burrow. Now, over on Kirk, obviously, even though he was over on Kirk, his top two lineups that saved his bacon were Zay Jones and Evan Ingram, because he had both of those, because he had Trevor Lawrence stacked with two and was able to spread out exposures by not going too crazy on one guy. So, on some of the core plays, he might go over the 30%, but really we're kind of keeping it to, because Amon-Ra was obviously a core play, most of the plays, trying to cycle through enough players by keeping max exposures at 30%. So we got Chark and Judy. Now, these were great positive leverage plays being over the field here. Obviously, Zay Jones, Lockett, Metcalf in those Geno stacks, Geno +2. Chris Moore smashed. So, positive leverage there. Kendall Hinton had a pretty good day for 3,400. Basically even with Amon-Ra. Slightly under on Jefferson, faded Thielen, and slightly under on Chase. And then I bet Chig is going to be the top guy here. And no, close though. Chig, 17%. Mark Andrews, 18%. And, this is a great play probably if Huntley plays the whole game and that offense is moving. Noah Fant, obviously in some Geno stacks, that would pop up in the domination station. We were on TJ Hawkinson as well, but, didn't expect him to be quite as chalky. So just under the field there. And then pretty good fade for Geek on Dulcich. I know he's not a huge Dulcich fan, even though he's good for tight ends. He's just not consistent. So playing Judy and Hinton was obviously a better play on the day. And Dallas or 49ers D. So that was another tournament tactics play. They were in the Milly 2 weeks ago, week 13, over the field there. And I believe they were in the Milly, actually, the lineup that we just reviewed. They were the defense that won it all. So great play there. And obviously another play that ended it for a positive ROI for Geek. So I think that's going to do it for this week's MME Milly Maker review. Wish you all the best of luck. And we'll see you next week. If you like this content, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And speaking of tournament tactics, which I've mentioned several times on the show, this is DFS Army's GPP strategy show that comes out every Friday for just kind of looking at the GPPs for the main slate. I'm sure we'll be doing a 3-game slate this week. We got the Saturday slate coming. So definitely want to hit that notification button, subscribe, and hit that notification button so that you don't miss that episode when we go live. That's going to do it. I wish you all the best of luck Saturday and Sunday. Take care.